Good evening and thank you for joining us. My name is Michelle Ritter and I am a member of Mercer Island Parent Edge. We are a volunteer parent organization within the Mercer Island PTA Council, and our mission is to encourage dialogue in our community and to bring speakers and topics to parents, educators, and students. We thank you for joining us this evening for the film screening and panel discussion of Race to Nowhere. Although this film is not specifically about our community, you'll see that many of the themes in the film echo what we heard from students in the I Wish project. This film was released back in 2009, but it's amazing that the issues are still relevant today. And we know the pandemic impacted our kids in many ways, but it's important to note that many of these concerns existed long before the pandemic. We invite you to watch and listen with an open mind and join us for the community conversation. As the film communicates, there is certainly reason for concern, but as a very good friend once reminded me, we on Mercer Island are a community of problem solvers. In that spirit, our goal tonight is to listen to one another and for students, educators, and parents to work together to share ideas and find solutions. We also want to acknowledge that we each come to this discussion with our own story, and we bring our varied experiences to the conversation. And this isn't about right and wrong, but about moving forward to best support our kids. Following the film, we will have a panel discussion with students, parents, educators, and health professionals. We're very grateful for their participation, and we're also very excited to have Bill Radke, a Mercer Island parent and KUOW radio host, to serve as our moderator for the evening. As you watch the film, we ask you to think about two questions. Number one, what hopes and dreams do you have for your child's future? And number two, are the things that we are doing supporting or hindering these desired outcomes? And we'll go ahead and watch the film. Enjoy.
Hi, it's great to be here. I'm Bill Radke. I have seen this film. It's wonderful, but the evening does not hinge on seeing the film. Truly, it raises issues and it humanizes it, but I think we humans know some humans who are dealing with all the same stuff. So truly, I think this is the good stuff right here is this conversation. And yeah, check it out though, because a well done film can hit home, and you can watch it with your kids, your parents. You can send it around. Hi everybody. So, by the way, I'm here with KUOW Radio, and let's get to it. We have a panel here. Before I introduce them, did everybody see that there are note cards up front? A blue note card for questions, yellow note card for solutions, ideas you have for solutions. And if you need a note card or you need a pencil, just let us know. And the questions will be for our panel. Who is students? We've got two students here. Grace Go. Hi, Grace. And Sid Schroff. Nice to see you, Sid. Welcome to both of you. We have a parent here. Where's Tracy Samuels? Hi, Tracy. Thanks for coming. We have a pediatrician here who I know well from MI Pediatrics, Dr. Evans. Welcome, Dr. Elizabeth Evans. From Youth and Family Services, a school-based counselor at the high school, Chris Harnish. Chris, thanks for being here. We have an associate principal here at the high school, Lisa Dean. Thank you, Lisa. And we also have the superintendent of the district, Fred Rundle, is with us, not up here on the panel because he does a lot of this stuff. He wanted to give space for this conversation and these folks, but if there's something you really want to know, you want to ask him, we got to know, he's up here too. So thank you, Superintendent Rundle. Let's get at it, and how many, let's start with our students, Grace and Sid. Have you seen this film?
We have seen
Clips of it, okay. But I'm guessing you're familiar.
Yeah,
You've lived it, okay, lived experience. So, the gist of the film, as you may know, has to do with the pressure that a lot of students, not all, but a lot of students and a lot of students on Mercer Island feel, and that's due to a lot of factors. The pandemic has piled on top of all the ones brought up here. But homework, peer pressure, parental pressure, well-meaning pressure, right? Wanting to get into the right school or a good school. What does that mean for happiness? Am I going to be happy without that? Comparison, all that stuff. So my question to you is, how real is that effect, and how severe because I don't want to overplay it. Like, how big a deal or small a deal do you think those factors are at Mercer Island? Grace, you want to begin?
I think we can all agree that Mercer Island High School is very cutthroat and competitive, and there's no secret to that. But definitely going into our junior year, both Sid and I were juniors, and junior year is notorious for being very academically rigorous. So I think we can both say that we've experienced pressure firsthand, whether it's from our teachers, especially our parents, and then also from our peers.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with that. I think junior year, not only does it serve as a place of difficulty for academics, I think a lot of people, this is the time in Mercer Island where traditionally people start thinking about colleges, and they start looking at their extracurriculars, and they're thinking, is what I'm doing enough? And sometimes that question expands to, am I enough? And am I enough for the expectations that are being set forth by parents, by other students, by teachers, and sometimes even themselves. And I think it's a very real thing that happens in the school, and pressure is a very real thing that everyone has to deal with.
Thank you both for that. Everyone hear them okay? Yes. Good enough, excellent. So we might expect to see some of these pressures that you just talked about showing up that in a way that our health professionals can see. So I'd like to ask Dr. Evans and Counselor Harnish, what are you seeing in terms of, I guess, symptoms would be the word? What signs of stress and anxiety are you seeing among?
Well, I think all adolescents experience some anxiety or stress or worry. You know, it's that adolescent angst. I had some middle-aged man angst on the way here, thinking about public speaking. So
Sure.
that's normal. The kids are, they have tests, maybe they have athletic events, maybe they're asking somebody out on a date or somebody to homecoming. It's when those emotions get to the point where they interfere with their daily functioning, and they start to withdraw from things that bring them pleasure, avoiding situations or events that maybe they normally wouldn't have a problem with, and there's an impact on their daily functioning or their daily routine. Dr. Evans?
So I have practiced on Mercer Island for about 6-7 years. Before that, I was in West Seattle. I would say that my practice here is at least 25% mental health issues day to day, where it might have been, probably significantly less when I was practicing in Seattle. I would say we see it at a very young age with anxiety and school refusal and behavior problems in elementary school. I would say in middle school we start to see more of the anxiety and depression. Unfortunately, I have had more than one suicide attempt in middle schoolers in the last year. And then in high school, we see a lot of mental health at Mercer Island Pediatrics.
And working with kids, they're definitely feeling that pressure from many, many areas. And even, as you said, Bill, even just from extracurricular things that they're really passionate about, that they want to do well in, all the way to our academics. And even just the social media is also a big part. We do support a lot of students who are having struggles with social media outside of school, but it comes into school. It impacts performance at school. So.
I'm gonna come back to at least one thing you mentioned, which was homework. But I always want to bring the students into this a lot and help us understand where this pressure, you said cutthroat, Grace? I heard the word pressure, I heard is what I do enough. Am I enough? I get emotional just thinking of that question, am I enough? As a parent of 3 and a human being myself. Where, I guess, when it comes to the school part of it, let's leave social media aside for a second if we could. what could schools be doing better? Because they want to prepare you, they want to give you all the options, right? They want you to have all the options in the world. So they want you, they have your best interest at heart, I think, generally. So what could, given all that pressure, what could schools do differently?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that question. And I think the first thing is that I want to put forth that competition isn't necessarily unhealthy. And I think that there are many students that benefit from competition, but there's some forms of competition where I think it comes in like competition with other students, and trying to compete with expectations, which is a word that I'll put forth again and again today, because I think the expectations that are set forth from people in the school community are just, I think that's really the root of the pressure that many students feel here at the high school. But I think some competition is healthy. Like a little bit of rigor is sometimes what some students need to be pushed, to be sure that they're getting to their potential. But at the same time, I think it's really important that people check in and they say, hey, I want you to know that I'm not expecting anything out of you, but I want to see you achieve the best that you can do, and I want you to feel comfortable with it, and make sure people know that there are people there to support them, and no matter how hard things could get with their expectations, I think it's important for many people to know that those expectations, that there's people that can help them with that. There's that not everybody is putting forth expectations for them, and really the only person that you should be worried about whose expectations there are, and people forget this a lot, is you, and you should be competing with yourself to do better. And I think that's the most important thing, and I think that's the most healthy form of competition. That I think it's important that the school tries to foster that competition with yourself, not against other people, but with yourself. And I don't think that's reiterated enough. And I think sometimes it's taken in the direction where we scale back everything, and then suddenly there's people that felt challenged that aren't challenged anymore, and they're no longer able to challenge themselves, and then it spirals into boredom for them. But I think it's how do you foster that environment of competition with yourself that keeps you wanting to make yourself do better.
Yeah, just to take a different approach, I remember during just the past 3 years of high school, I have been sick, really, really, really badly sick 2 times. The first time was when I got COVID. That was not pretty. And the second time was not when I was physically sick, but when I was mentally sick. And when you're mentally sick, it's uncontrollable. You don't want to get out of bed, and even though it's your mental health that's affected, it actually goes on to your physical health as well. Sometimes I would just be shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't go to class many of the times. And during that time when I was very sick mentally, the people that I was around the most, it wasn't my family, it wasn't my friends, but it was actually teachers and staff. And I'm very grateful that there are some incredible teachers at our school. Some teachers I'd like to mention are Mr. Goldhammer. He's an amazing English teacher, but because students are around teachers and staff the most, 8 hours a day, every single day, I think it's really important to monitor the language and the tone in which the teachers speak about certain things, whether that's college related or maybe it's something even as small as homework. Just thinking about how teachers do things. And another point that I want to make is that student mental health is extremely important. I can say that because I've been through it. But what a lot of people don't think about is the mental health of teachers, especially the past 2 or 3 years with COVID, we haven't given enough credit to our teachers and our staff and everything they've been through and everything they've done for us. So making sure that teachers are also thinking about their own mental health. Because if you're sick, you can't help someone else. So really thinking about teachers and staff at our school.
Thank you for sharing that, Grace. Now, I'd love to hear from a parent, Tracy. You've had 3 go through the district, is that right? Or you have a couple still in high school?
Okay. I have 3, but I've had 2 go all the way through.
Okay.
And go through college, so we're on the other side, and they're working in the working world, so they got jobs, and we're good, even during COVID. So I think just to kind of, go on top of what the students are saying, is that I think really just listening to your kids and knowing that each one of them is so different. I have one that is a really academic kid. I have one that was more academic but had learning issues, and then I have one that has a lot of learning issues. And I think that we get in a rut of thinking that success comes with certain colleges, a certain plan of what it looks like post high school. And I think the thing that I learned in going through all of it is to really let your kids drive the process and tell you where they're wanting to go and what they're wanting to do and the kinds of places that they want to look at post college. I think one of the frustrating things that I've found in going through it, that I'm sure is part of the pressure that that students feel, is that there seems to be kind of this formula that they put on each other of what that looks like when they leave. And if you don't get into one of those places, those 20, 25 places, somehow you haven't lived up to whatever they deem as success. And I think what we have to look at as parents are there are thousands of colleges out there. And there is a place for every single kind of learner and every single kind of student where they will thrive. And I think we have to embrace them and really hear what kind of place is right for them and help them find those places, even if they're the ones that you've never heard of or you've never heard other parents or other students have heard. And that's where they'll find the real gem in being excited and motivated about what that next step is for them. And I think as parents, we can really help them in that process to let them take a deep breath and know that there are so many options out there for them. And there is no certain formula. And if you aren't in the top 40 or 50 of your class, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to have success beyond high school.
How can parents find out the scoop on, cause if we don't know anything else, we know Harvard and Stanford, or we know, a degree is so important. How, if a parent wants to know, okay, I don't know it all, what is actually the connection between any college, a big group of colleges, those 25 colleges, what is the connection between that and happiness, or is there any connection? How would a parent figure that out? I guess I'm curious for anyone who has an opinion about that.
I'll speak and I'll pass it to you. So I had a son who was super interested in marine biology from the time he was tiny. And so we kind of went on this journey together of what are all of those schools out there? And they were schools like College of the Atlantic and Eckerd and all these schools that, we had never heard of. And we went down kind of this whole process of figuring out what were those schools. And I think in the beginning, it was really intimidating for him because these kids put so much pressure on each other. Well, if no one's heard of this school, then no one's gonna think that I'm doing the right thing, I'm making the right choice. And it was this constant dialogue of us having to share with him that there are different places that have different meaning for everybody, and you have to find your place. You have to find what makes the most sense for you. And I just think that that's the best gift that we can give our kids, is to really listen and meet them where they are and give them what they need, and reach out to, you know, their counselor at the high school and have their counselor help them investigate, you know, other avenues. And, you know, I think, as they stated, is make your competition, your happiness about yourself. I think that we tend to these kids tend to put a lot of pressure on, I have to be like so-and-so. I have to rise to this, you know, sort of view of what's out there. And I think really instilling in them that they have to find what makes them happy and what drives themselves.
I would just put a plug that I bet that several of the people in this room didn't know what they were going to do when they were 16, 17, 18 years old, maybe even 21, 22, and we put a lot of pressure. Oh, what are you going to do? What do you want to major in? What college do you want to go to? And for some people, that may not be where they're at. So I'm all for a gap year. I'm all for an experience. There's plenty of choices out there. I think you have to meet your child where they're at and try not to get into what my family lovingly calls the mom mafia of Mercer Island, of what are you doing, and feeling like you have to live up to it. So I would just add that plug. And, you know, when I talk about what is the next step, you know, it can be passion, it can be interest, it can be location, it can be what feels comfortable, what you want out of life. You know, how are you going to grow? I think all of those are questions that you should be asking, and not necessarily how many students from Mercer Island went to Santa Clara last year, or what's the most, you know, popular school for, you know, that, I don't know, what GPA do I need, and what's the most competitive school? And I think it's very easy to get into that rut here. I've been through it with my first one. She goes to a school that is 400 students that probably nobody in this room has heard of, and she's happy as a clam, and it's her where she fits. So I think that it's, like Tracy said, I think it's just really important to meet them where they're at and investigate and see what all the options are. And I think the counselors do a great job at the high school, and I think there are lots of things through the library, through Parent Edge, on what are some different options if college isn't in the cards right after you leave high school. Because for some kids, it's not, and that is perfectly fine.
I think the students have a couple of things. I love what we're hearing is that as parents, we need to know our children, and as a school and as parents, we're helping our students get to know themselves. And our counseling office does offer quite a bit for students, and we do have a tool for students who even start at 9th grade. It's a 9th through 12th grade tool, and it's Naviance, and Naviance has a lot of tools for students that can help them understand themselves and colleges that are available to them. And Sid was just going to talk to that quickly.
Yeah, a really quick word about Naviance. It's frankly a pretty helpful tool that helps people discover more about themselves, frankly. And it helps people look at all the options that they have in front of them, and it helps them choose. And I think it helps them set realistic expectations for themselves. It helps them set goals that they feel more passionate to achieve. There's plenty of like fun tests there that like finds like your career cluster and like helps you like narrow down, hey, what might I be interested in? And I know someone brought up the fact that when people are 16, when people are a teenager, they don't really know what they want to do. And there's so many options, there's so many fields you could go into, and I think Naviance has been a helpful tool to help people narrow that down. And I think I'm really grateful that we have something that's that's helping organize a little bit of our future and help us feel like something is there for us to help see that path forward. Because for a lot of people, sometimes it's hard to see that path forward for them.
Can I ask a question here? Oh, Grace, did you want to add to that?
I kind of want to caution parents when we talk about finding your thing and finding your passion, because when you think about college, I know a lot of people in here probably thought this. They were probably like, oh, a 4.0 GPA isn't enough. Like you have to have your spike. If you don't know what a spike is, it's basically like if you find your thing, you need to take it as far as you can. People are shifting from being more well-rounded to just having your one thing. And I kind of want to caution parents about that. I think it's really important to promote exploration of many different passions, which is why I think Naviance is such a great tool, because it doesn't limit you to one singular path. But in my experience, I have been like decently good at something, and then as soon as a teacher or a mentor or a family member kind of like starts to kind of push you, you just lose all of that passion, and that's absolutely devastating. So that's just one thing I wanted to add.
Okay, good. And there may be questions from audience members too that I'd love to hear, so feel free to bring them up. But one thing I could imagine is maybe someone here is thinking, I'm not a member of any mafia. When I tell my kids to, you find your thing, really go for it. It's because excellence is important too. Mastery and excellence, and that can be about passion, not just about perfection. And the fact is, well, you tell me, but I could understand the point of view that, well, I wish we weren't living in such a competitive country with, there's fancy schools and less fancy schools and all that stuff. But this is the reality, and this could be a cultural thing too, depending on where their approach to this subject. But I kind of want to put a word in for why do you think parents put pressure on kids in the way they do? Let's try to see it from their point of view.
I've had this discussion with my parents before, and I'm circling back a little bit to expectations because recently, I'll just I'll preface this a little bit. I'm very academically driven. I do a lot of academic things, but I also have many passions for things like music. I do a lot of musical theater. I do jazz band, orchestra, like any music thing. I love to compose, like all of that. But at some point, and then I started to, after what Grace kept talking about, like that pushing, I think a little bit of burnout sort of felt, like came in. And I think that pushing is helpful because I think what parents really want to see is, I think they want more than anything. The one thing that they want is to see their kids succeed. And they push for that. And they know that pushing sometimes makes it hard for their kids, but I think the number one thing that they want is for them to succeed. I think sometimes in that pushing, kids feel stressed because they don't know if they're meeting their parents' expectations. And I think it's tough because if I'm not pushing hard enough, I'm talking as if I'm a parent, but if I'm not pushing hard enough, will they be able to get the opportunities that they have the potential to reach? But if I push too hard, they could get burnt out. And I think what Grace was talking about being pointed, about that spike, I think it can come for people that want to be well-rounded as well. What I did is I have started to explore as many possible things as I could do, and that's resulted in, frankly, a schedule that is extremely hard to maintain. I'm going from place to place. In fact, I went home to drop off my stuff. I tutored math for a little bit, and then I rushed back to the high school because I wanted to be here for this. And I think I think there's a lot of, I think it's really important for students to think, is what you're doing, are you doing it for yourself? Is this something that you're doing for yourself, or are you trying to do it for someone else? Because, and I think for parents, I think it's really important for them to try and find that balance. And it's not easy. It's not easy to find that balance between pushing and like between that supportive pushing and sort of leaning back. Because I think it's really important that parents really want to see the best for their kids. And I think it's hard, and I think sometimes kids don't show the gratefulness that parents sometimes want to receive from that. And I think it's a complex thing, but I think it's really important to find that balance, and it's really important for students to see, am I doing this for me? Is this making you happy? Because otherwise, you start feeling burnt out, and I felt it, and it doesn't feel great because you get up and you just don't want to do what you love.
How many hours of sleep are you getting a night?
I actually prioritize sleep a lot, and I say this is good. I know it's not like the medical good, but it's good actually compared to many students. I get usually like around 7 to 8 hours of sleep each night, and I prioritize that. And sometimes I'm like, hey, and I think this is taking away a little bit from the academic rigor, and I feel like this is a little bit of the burnout speaking, but I'm like, hey, I'm not going to do this assignment. I have first period off. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it in the morning because I want to sleep, and it'll make me feel better and function better.
The reason I ask, so a lot of times sleep's the first thing to go. Our kids pack their schedules with academics, extracurriculars, sports, hobbies, and at the end of the day, they feel like they don't have enough time, and the sleep gets cut short, and that contributes to all other kinds of mental health problems, concentration problems, irritability, and they compensate with Red Bull, Monster, Rockstar, double latte, extra syrup, and it's not a healthy compensation or a way to try to push yourself through. So thinking about those hours in the day, I see Dr. Evans shaking her head here.
I just have to talk about sleep because it's probably the one thing for every teen visit that I drill on. I think that sometimes as parents, we need to tell kids, let's take a step back. We're not prioritizing what's really important, which is your health and your mental health, and sometimes that's hard to do as a parent, to say we've got to take something away. I think that's really hard to do when kids are doing amazing things and are great at so many things, but when kids are getting 5-6 hours of sleep a night, it's just not enough. I would say regarding that, a couple questions ago, you said what could teachers do to support, and I think one of the things that I advocate students to do is to go and talk to their teachers and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. I've got 3 assignments, a soccer game, I've been sick, whatever. And I wish that teachers would say more often, I understand, let's move that assignment back 3 days. It really doesn't make, sense for you to get 5 hours of sleep. We can push that assignment back. And so teaching our students to advocate for themselves, that they need to say, sleep is a priority to me. I am really struggling here. And for teachers to listen and to say, I'm not just trying to get out of an assignment, I just need a little bit more time, and I need to prioritize my health. I think that is really important, and I think as parents, we can do the same thing. Not write the teacher on their behalf, but encourage our students to advocate for themselves.
And I would just piggyback on that and say that I think we have to look at all of this like we're in a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that we forget as parents that there's all of this craziness in high school to get them into college. And then they get into college, and then we kind of go, okay, you've got it. And we forget that they've become so stressed and they're so overwhelmed that a lot of times when they get to college, they're totally burned out. And you don't want them burned out right when they're starting that part of their lives. So I think those are all also things that we have to take into consideration, and to be a little more, I love your take on talking to the teacher, flexible in high school, because some colleges are not. You know, my daughter went to a university that if you missed more than 2 classes, they dropped you from the class. That was it. And it didn't matter if you had COVID, it was completely unreasonable in my book. But so if we could be a little more flexible in high school, because some of those things are very unbendy when you get to the other, the other side. And I think, again, listening to your kid, I had a kid that was go, 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 like you were saying. And so we had a policy in our house. She wasn't allowed to do homework on Friday nights when she got home. She wanted to. It was everything we could do to tie her to, sit and do something else besides want to do, something that was academic. But we're like, nope, no homework on Friday nights. This is you time. You need to prioritize something else that brings you joy, or figure out what that is. And just to give them a little breather, because they get really caught up in the hamster wheel.
Good. There might be, by the way, some parents who had the thought, wait, so a university is going to be unbending? Don't I want to prepare them for the unbending now? But I'm going to leave that aside for a moment, because we got a question about homework, which I'm glad you brought us back to. Lisa, maybe you could start this one. This audience member says, let's talk about homework. Why so much? Our kids are in school for 7 hours. Is that not enough? Adults don't want to work into the night. Why should kids?
I'd love to know more about that. There's a lot to that. I wonder right away. I'm thinking, what are the classes? How many AP classes is the student taking? How many honors and so forth are they taking? Do they have an off period? Are they taking 7 periods per day when they could take 6? There's just a lot that goes into that. I do feel that I love the idea of just talking with teachers. I do feel that our teachers, for the most part, are really receptive. Those AP classes, though, they really do have a pacing guide in order to get through this material, and then to get the credit if students are taking the AP test for credit. And so I just think, again, it's really this idea of who is my child? You know them best in helping students. Our counselors, every seminar or workshop that we give, we're always talking about balance and looking at how are we spending our week and so forth. So I think it's a both and. I do think that as a system we need to be looking at that, and then also to help our students and our families to understand that we don't need to have 5, 6 AP classes. That's like a heavier load than you would take in college. We have a number of students who are coming in from our middle school over the summer, and they're taking geometry over the summer so that they can accelerate as freshmen. And just that pacing again, it's like, where are we going with this? What is the end goal of these types of decisions? And so I really just will say, none of this is, it's not black and white. It's not something that's going to be easily solved. And there are some students who absolutely thrive, and 5 AP classes is what's right for them. But we have a lot of students that's not what's right for them, that it is kind of this idea of expecting, trying to be what they expect other people to be. So it doesn't really answer, but it's so specific. And I would just really encourage the dialogue with your students around homework, and then to reach out to teachers if you're really feeling that it is heavy, and let them know. We are here to listen. We are here to listen. Do you have anything you want to add about homework?
I have a really quick thing. I'm one of those students that takes a lot of AP classes. I have 5 AP classes in my schedule. Well, technically 4, but I'm still taking the AP French test. But I think, I think something that's important is that when I
How are you
decided,
here right now, dude?
when I decided to, when I decided to take these classes, people, friends, counselors, parents, teachers made it clear that it's a lot of work. And the classes I'm taking because I enjoy them. And I think it's important that people know, like, do I feel happy with this decision? And I keep circling back to happiness and expectations because it's important. And when people sign up for this, they need to know what the workload is and how it's coming. And I think, yes, it's very important that teachers can be flexible about workload and stuff like that, because I think sometimes it gets a lot for many students, especially because students learn at such different paces. And it's important for people academically and in extracurriculars, people who are at the top, to help bring the people that, I don't like saying that they're at the bottom, but I don't know what else to use right now, but help bring people up.